called flannel grass. This is what my mother used to use to teach me Sunday school. Now, so the story today is going to be about a little boy called Samuel. But first we have to start with his mom. Her name was Hannah. Can you say that?
Hannah?
Do you know anybody called Hannah?
No.
No? And the dad, Elkanah. Oh yeah, and yeah, there's Asher.
He was allowed to come today.
Yes. So this is his mom and dad Elkanah, and this is a very important person too. His name is Eli. Can you say Eli? Eli was a priest in the temple, and he would sit at the doorway of the temple and watch people and help people and be the voice of their God. He would talk to them about God. Now, Elkanah every year would bring his family to the temple to make a sacrifice and to worship God. But what's her name? Hannah. Hannah was not a very happy woman because everyone around her had kids and Hannah didn't have any kids, and she was sad. She wanted to have a baby. So one time when they were at the temple, she was there alone and she was crying and crying and crying. And the priest, what's his name? Eli, saw her crying, and she was talking with her mouth open, crying and crying. And he thought that she had too much to drink. So he went over to her and said, "Daughter, why are you acting like this in the church?" And Hannah said, I'm not acting bad. I'm not drunk. She said, "I'm so sad." She says, "I want a baby, and it's been years and years and I have no baby, and I'm just so sad." And she was crying and crying. So Eli, he touched her shoulder and said, "May God grant you what you want today." Whew. So Hannah got up and she went out and she talked to Eli to talk to her husband Elkanah, and she felt good. She said, "The priest told me that to be calm and ask God to grant me what I wished." So they went home, and sure enough, a while later, guess what happened?
We had a baby.
They had a baby. And she says,
I'm
"I'm going to call this baby Samuel because God gave him to me." And that's what the word Samuel means. But you know what? While she was praying and crying, she made a promise to God. She said, "If you give me a baby, a son," she says, "I will let him work and serve you all his life. I will give him up. If you give him to me to take care of for a few years, I will give him back to you." And guess what happened? Samuel grew up into a little boy, and sure enough, they brought him back to the temple. And they brought him back and they gave him to Eli and said, "Eli, my little boy Samuel, who I promised when I was praying in the temple, and remember you talked to me," he says, "I'm giving the little boy back to serve you." So this Samuel grew up serving the boy, serving the Lord in the temple, see? And he would polish the different things in the temple. He would polish them, and he would take care of them, and he would talk to the people in the temple, and his job was to keep everything going smoothly. One day, this was years later, but one day when Eli was getting old, he couldn't see very well, and he was getting old, and Samuel would sleep in another room in the temple. He'd sleep in another room in the temple, and but he'd always be listening for Eli because Eli was getting old. One night, he heard a voice, and it said, "Samuel! Samuel!" And he got up in bed and said, "Oh, Eli's calling me." So he ran to see Eli. And said, "Eli, what do you want?" He said, "I heard you calling me. What do you want?" And Eli woke up and said, "I didn't call you. Go back to bed. Just go back to bed." So Samuel went back.